Hello and welcome to For Wales, See Wales with me, Will Hayward.
Me, Robin Morgan.
Me, Mel Owen.
And me, Professor Matthew Wall.
We are joined by a guest from Swansea University, Professor of Politics, and also not Welsh.
Yeah, Shemai though. Shemai. yeah.
See the effort he's made? Well done.
Immediately.
I'm doing dusky Cymru, you know, so...
Oh, Diane.
Sorry, mate, no. It's performative, to be fair. No, I'm from Ireland, yeah, originally.
So, why is Mel doing it as though I'm some anti-Cymru militant?
You try and speak Welsh all the time, in all fairness.
I've got a 160-day Duolingo streak. If you were a dragon, I could introduce you very easily.
There you go.
Oh.
Well, unfortunately, not a dragon, but a professor of
Yeah,
politics.
but Diane on the streak. Yeah. Diane is one of my favourites. It goes
It's a
into
good one.
pretty much everything, yeah.
I think there's no way of saying it that doesn't sound patronising, though. Like, Diane.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's like, you know, in English, like, thank you very much. There's no way of saying that in a non-passag way.
Wow, I misread it completely then. Oh. I thought it was genuinely well done.
No. Yeah. Well done. Yeah.
It's a verbal pat on the head, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. But it's a nice one.
Should we go Matthew? Should we go Professor Wall?
Just Matt, actually.
Matt, okay.
Yeah, even shorter.
Neither.
Diane. So, Matt, can you just outline for us your background, where you're from, and your kind of area of expertise?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I'm from Dublin originally, so you can probably hear my accent isn't particularly Welsh. So I did my PhD in politics, back in 2010 in Trinity College in Dublin. So my focus has always been on elections. I've always loved elections. Like, it's actually one of the things I really kind of winds me up over here is you don't have enough posters up for elections over here. Like, if you're ever in Ireland for an election, it's wall-to-wall posters. So it's like a big festival. Yeah.
I get a fringe.
Yeah. So as in who you're voting for.
So obviously in Ireland we have a slightly different electoral system, something we'll be talking about. But there it's like individual candidates. So even the same party might have 2 or 3 candidates in your constituency and they're all trying to get that number one vote. But so for me, I kind of grew up where elections are this kind of like festival of posters and people chatting about politics. And like they kind of activated in me the kind of sports fan. And what I love, like following politics, you know, you all know, so often there's no result, right? You know, like, I don't know, social housing, I think you all were talking about.
Yeah.
Like it's not like they do actually snip the ribbon on the 20,000 and then it's not really meaningful anyway. Whereas like the elections, there's a vote, they count up the votes, there's seats, and then we go again. So that was what drew me into the study of politics. Electoral systems was my PhD specialism. But around the time I was doing that work, like this thing called the internet was starting to become significant.
Heard of that.
And so I started looking at like cyber campaigning, so how people were campaigning online. Back then, just having a website meant you were like way ahead of the field, like literally just a billboard style website. That was a third of candidates in Ireland back in 2007. With Obama coming along, that really just like escalated quite a lot. And I also got interested in like these online portals that people could use where you'd get advice about which party you corresponded most to, based on like answering a series of questions. I don't know if you all ever done a website.
Yeah,
like
I know
that.
of them. Yeah.
I've always sort of had a slight panic that like they've been created for nefarious means, and I'll end up. I'm such a people pleaser that I'll vote for whoever this website tells me to. So I'm just like, okay.
Robin's now standing as an independent because the website told him to.
Apparently so.
So I got a job after I have a PhD. I got a job in Holland making these kind of sites because in Holland, like half the electorate will use a site like this.
Really?
Simply because like they have a super proportional system. So they have 15, 16 parties viable for seats. So like the difference between the center left and the center left and the Animal Rights Party, like what's their policy on, I don't know, income tax. So it makes a lot of sense in a Dutch context to do this. So I was making websites like that for quite a long time. Then I got another job in Belgium talking about electoral systems again. Then I got a job here in Swansea 12 years ago. Settled down into life here in Wales and started studying Welsh elections and trying to make sense of them. So that's pretty much my background in terms of how I got into studying politics and what I study.
So what is your main thought as a, for want of a better word, an outsider coming in and seeing Welsh politics as someone who knows a lot about other systems and other kind of polities? What was your kind of main takeaway from Welsh politics that you think, okay, that's a bit different?
Yeah, and so like in this kind of slightly peripatetic life course I've described, right? I often I'm quite used to going to new countries and learning new political systems. What really struck me most about Wales was like how hard it was to learn about Welsh politics, right? So how few kind of high quality resources there were to just follow the day-to-day politics. And then when I'd try and like chat to people about it, how few of them knew anything about Welsh politics. How kind of relatively complicated devolution is compared to like, you know, local politics or like federal structures where it's a little bit more clear cut. And then, I would say other than that, I think how disengaged I think the population is from the political system. And so to the extent people will talk to you about politics here in Wales, they're mostly talking about British politics. And so that was something as an outsider, I was like, this is actually quite hard to figure out this political system. And when I went to do my vote advice application websites of these things, I was like, the questions that differentiate the parties are quite technical, right? So you have to kind of have your head into the policy to understand, say, the difference between like Plaid Cymru and Labour can be quite difficult to pick out. Yeah. And so like when we usually try and make those questions quite simple, but like on simple questions, they all had identical beliefs. And that's like the kind of progressive consensus characterization of Welsh politics, which is another unusual feature, which is like between Plaid, Labour and the Welsh Lib Dems, they kind of agree on nearly everything. And it's quite difficult to differentiate them. And so again, that's a relatively unusual feature.
Was that disengagement with Welsh politics then quite noticeable compared to the other places that you've been? Mm-hmm. Like that was what is, I know it's probably a very difficult question. If we knew the answer, we'd have all solved it. But what do you think was like the main reason for that? Or was there one that you could kind of point out?
So there's a few reasons that are traditionally given. So the first is the kind of media landscape in Wales. I did find it strange when, like, you know, you go on BBC Wales for the news about Wales, and it's always like a dog that was lost on a beach that was found. I'm like, what about what happened in the Parliament, right?
Yeah.
They're talking about the dog. That's what's happening in Parliament.
And generally speaking, you know, like most people take their media from a UK kind of base here in Wales. So there's always been this question of like the viability of like Welsh specific media. And so that's a kind of, I guess, like a supply side issue. What I've often been struck by talking to people who are educated here is how little political education people have. So the kind of civic education.
So people you would expect to be engaged in politics.
Well, these are people I'm talking to who are coming to study politics, right? And I'm saying like, oh, you know, so if you've done your A-level, like that's a kind of a British, American kind of politics. And if you haven't done your A-level, you've gotten next to nothing about how your political system works. And so like you see these kind of survey findings, like, you know, more than half of people can't identify the leaders of the Welsh political parties. Something like 40% of people don't know that the NHS is devolved to the Senedd. You know, so on all of these kind of indicators, it's not working. And I guess you look to like education and media as the kind of drivers of those results. And in both cases, they're, and again, not to say to you all, oh, no one's doing Welsh politics, right? Here we are. But like the kind of scale of it, say compared to Scotland, is totally different, or compared to Ireland, where I come from.
So from a different country's perspective, what are they doing differently to us? Is it, as you say, in education? Is it in the schools? Is it sort of, I suppose, from a media landscape, the news stories being focused on the political news of the day from that country?
Yeah, I think it's just the volume of like media landscape is probably the biggest, most noticeable difference. So like, I don't know, if you're living in Scotland, it's both possible and kind of normal to follow Scottish politics day to day in a way that in Wales, I think you have to really actively look for information that allows you to do that. But that it's also a little bit of a chicken and egg, because like do the media shape the population, or does the population shape the media, right? Or if people don't feel that the Senedd is kind of relevant to their lives or interesting enough to follow, like, can you really blame the media, who are after all just trying to make a living and tell people stuff that they're interested about? I think in the education system, so much more could be done. I think this is really an area where the ball has been dropped, especially with the votes at 16 that we had in the last election. So there's a lot of discussion at the time in that policy that we're going to have a complete revamping of civic education here in Wales, right, to kind of accompany it, to drive turnout in that demographic. And nothing really specific has emerged. Like the new curriculum is quite vague and aspirational.
Yeah. Do you think part of the problem with the 16-17 engagement was it happened in the middle of COVID as well? So like their first election was a point where they were hardly in school.
Yeah, and well, I think there. So the Wales Governance Centre did an interesting report on the 16 and 17-year-old cohort, and so like we don't actually have amazing data about actually what proportion of them voted. The registration numbers indicated it was like only half of them registered in the first place, so that wasn't particularly good. As you say, like a lot of the kind of natural to and fro of politics does happen face to face, and so that was kind of cut off during this during the COVID-19 crisis. At the same time, though, on the other hand, COVID-19 was the best thing in a way that ever happened to Welsh politics in terms of engagement. So just to go back, so when I arrived here back in 2012, very few people would have known who the First Minister was. Like by the end of COVID, everyone knew who Mark Drakeford was because we had to listen to him to find out whether we could go to the grocery shop or not, right? So it was in one sense, well, you're totally right. It was a kind of physically difficult environment to get into politics, but in another sense, it was like the most directly publicly relevant that like the Senedd had ever been. Do you know what I mean? It was in the run up to that election.
Certain conversations that I've had with people before about Welsh politics and the general disinterest or like disregard of it, I think comes from a place of if they don't feel pro-Welsh independence, they almost go, well, I don't really believe in the Senedd anyway. So they then don't engage in it. And it's almost as like, you don't have to agree with its existence, but it is there. And it's as if there is a slight divide with some people who go, well, I want Westminster to be kind of in control of Wales, therefore I don't engage with Welsh politics at all. I just wonder if that kind of plays a part in it as well.
Yeah, and I think generally speaking, how would I say it? There's this kind of argument of like the settled will of the Welsh people has kind of moved towards the devolution or devolution plus a little bit. However, in one sense, I suppose just opting out of something you don't agree with is a pretty valid strategy, right? Like if you ignore it, it might go away.
Yeah. Just evaporated from Cardiff Bay. It's just not there anymore.
I mean, I think if you look at like, so the referendum you all had on like primary legislation. So that was just before I came here.
2011.
Yeah. What's the turnout there? Like 33%, something along those lines. And so I think like it's oftentimes like that's seen as a referendum that really solidified devolution because it was like 65% approval for primary lawmaking power. But looking at it from an engagement perspective, it was what was...
it was 35%. What's actually interesting about this is it came up on my history that I've Googled.
What else came up on your history, Will? should we get into that? No?
Speed them out.
Yeah.
Kind of summing up Mel's point, actually, the turnout was over 70% in Gwynedd, and it was much, much lower. The lowest was Monmouthshire.
Yeah,
well, yeah.
Exactly. And so I think for voters in that referendum who saw the writing on the wall, it's like, well, I'd rather not even endorse this process by voting.
Yeah.
It's funny actually. We have this thing in our, if anyone's in a union, you need a certain amount of like turnout for a strike vote to be valid. Mm-hmm. So most people who are voting are generally in favour of industrial action. So it's far more effective to just not vote and try and like sink the threshold than it is to vote no.
Yeah. I mean, I'm curious. So if I went to a pub in Ireland and started trying to talk politics to someone, I feel like, and this might be a kind of outside perspective, that there'd be a pretty good chance they'd talk back to me and have a view. Do you think it's the same in Wales, specifically on Welsh politics, and does that surprise you?
So I think it's exactly that experience that I suppose when I first landed here and was trying to get to grips with things that I did have, where talking about, I think talking about politics can still play. I think these days you're probably going to be talking about like Donald Trump, Keir Starmer, right? And politics is very visceral, very emotional at the moment. I think it's probably still the case that if you bring up, like, I don't know, the NHS waiting list targets or Elioned Morgan's Red Welsh Way, like people are going to look at you as if you started talking about your, I don't know, collection of Lord of the Rings figurines, right? It's a kind of a nerdy sideline.
Something else Will would do, actually, to be fair.
Yeah, it's second on your history, wasn't it?
Please continue.
I do like Lord of the Rings. I mean, there's a reason that example came to my head as well, Will. So, it's okay. But there is a sense in which those kind of conversations, whereas to contrast it with Ireland, if you're talking about a political scandal or a political figure, most people are well up for a kind of rough and tumble chat about it. yeah, here I've tended to find that any descent into like Welsh politics kills the conversation pretty quickly.
Do you think that's because Labour have, most successful party, ever? Do you think it's because it's just been a given who everyone's going to vote for? So therefore there doesn't need to be a discussion of who you're going to vote for because it's just been this sort of idea that Labour will always get in?
Yeah, I mean, there is this incredible boringness of Welsh politics. I mean, that's in some senses like why I'm so glad to be studying it now. It is starting to pick up. I'm not even sure so much in Wales as beyond it. So when you talk to people outside of Wales, all of a sudden this election is kind of interesting in a way that previous elections haven't been particularly interesting because of reform, right? So reform is kind of disrupting on the right. Plaid is coming up on the left, and all of a sudden, like the election looks consequential in high stakes in a way that previous elections sort of haven't felt. It's more been about like, will Welsh Labour need the Welsh Lib Dems or not to govern? Yeah. And that might be, if you're really interested in bus availability, that might be a big question to you, right? Yeah. But if you're kind of an ordinary person, especially with this progressive consensus idea, it hasn't really felt like that. Like when Plaid has become more involved, it hasn't felt like that different of a set of outcomes. And just I'd say as well, like the fact that I think that the way that the financials of devolution work, especially here in Wales, it does take one of the kind of key elements of politics out.
Borrowing, taxation, when you don't
the stuff
have those leaders.
I mean, you were probably all following the budget last week, right? And I'm pretty sure the people in the Senate were following it just like us, kind of waiting to hear what was going to happen.
I was in the canteen and there was a couple of Labour MSs just watching it on the TV. And they knew as much about what was going to happen as anyone.
So depressing.
That's wild, isn't it?
That is awful.
So it does feel like only half of politics is going on, the kind of distribution half.
Yeah.
And obviously with the NHS, like anything you do that takes away from the NHS is going to wind people up, right? So like the scope for action, especially if you don't have a kind of a constitutional position about like basically getting more control of money, is very limited and sort of technical in nature.
Because that is part of what, when people talk about Scottish politics, a lot of it is about the desire for more power, isn't it? And that creates, that's fundamentally more interesting than whether Jane Dodds is going to get rid of greyhound racing.
They're not coming after the greyhounds, are they?
They've banned greyhound racing.
Oh my God.
They're appealing, right? The dogs.
The dogs are amazing. Let us work.
They just want to run.
just let me run. The hares are absolutely delighted. Right, we are going to move on in a sec, but first, we always have a little gift for our guests. But the word on the street is, and by the street I mean what I overheard you talking about while I was in the loo before we started. You've also bought us a little something.
I have, yes.
Ooh.
I immediately like him.
Yeah.
So I've been on a diplomatic mission to the Université Catholique de Lille to make friends with them for Swansea University.
Nice.
And one of the gifts they gave to me were these waffles. So these are kind of like, how would I describe them? They're kind of a Flemish Dutch style,
Like the stroop waffle type thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. We call them stupid waffles in our house. Great fun. Great fun.
A Joker family. So.
And I thought, well, I don't have any breakfast bars on me, but this might be a nice gift to bring to you all. So please, enjoy these.
Oh,
thank
Are they rum? They're rum-based.
They are, but I think
Yeah.
you're still safe to drive after eating them.
Well,
So
thank you so much.
you're very welcome.
So you've bought us a really cultured, thoughtful gift. We've just bought some non-alcoholic Guinness.
Oh, Diane, this is fantastic.
Are you a fan?
Oh, well, I mean, if there was alcohol in it, I'd probably be more of a fan. I do have to drive back to Swansea. So,
They're very
thank you
fun.
so
They're
much.
fun to drive with. People give you two looks down the M4 and you're sort of chugging your can.
I didn't think I'd be cracking cans on the podcast.
Yeah,
That's
there you go.
excellent.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's also good because Guinness gets so little advertising that I think it's probably, I don't think they even have a budget for it.
True.
It does feel like a little bit racist, though.
I've
It
always
was
said
Mel's
this about
idea. We've got a new electoral system in Wales. Now, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I think it's dog shit. And let's
Quote
be
Will
honest.
Hayward.
Would you agree, Professor?
I mean,
So it's a closed list system. Can you give me like your thoughts on it?
yeah, sure. And I think this your characterization is something I wouldn't disagree with. There's a kind of an academic answer to that question. Not mostly because, like, okay, so let's talk a little bit about how it works as a voter, right? So what is a closed list? What does it mean? It means that you're presented with, like, in your constituency or super constituency, as they now are, you're presented with a list of candidates, right? And you just tick X on that list or not. So the full extent of your choice is to support a list or not support a list. When it comes to, like, who gets in, that's entirely determined by the ordering of the candidates on that list, right? So if you're the 6th Labour candidate in my constituency, like, good luck with that, right? That's not going to happen. I'm sorry for that person to say that. But if I really like that 6th candidate, right, I have no way of, like, indicating that I support them. So this is the very reason why, when they convened, like, a kind of expert panel to recommend the type of electoral system that Wales should move to, they didn't recommend this kind of system, right? They explicitly didn't recommend it. They recommended the type of system we have in Ireland, right, which is proportional representation by single transferable vote. That's a kind of a sweet system because you can rank order all of the candidates. And if your candidate is eliminated, it kind of rolls over into your 2nd, 3rd, 4th.
So how that would work is you'd have a list of candidates, and I would go number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. My number 1 is eliminated, and then my vote goes to number 2.
Rolls up to number 2.
And you can choose to not put a number next to someone.
Yeah, you can just do 1, 2, 3, which is what a lot of people will do, or just 1. But it gives you that option to indicate a preference at the candidate level. So like I said, so say Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael, the bigger parties back home, they'd run 2, 3 people in a seat, right? So I could pick the person that I like the most, right? You don't have that option, and that kind of breaks, like, a type of a linkage that I think is really important in democracy, right? The link between the actual member of the Senedd and the electorate who supports them.
A mainstay of British politics for time immemorial.
I mean, it's literally one of the only things you guys do well. To be fair,
Is that representative part of representative democracy?
Yeah, well, it's the constituency work. So I've got a PhD student working on that idea of the patch and all the work that goes into that, right? And there is a rational reason for politicians to do that, because at the end of the day, in the kind of UK level system, they have to get a personal vote, right? They have a party brand, but it's on them to get a vote. So, like, Pure STV kind of emphasizes that even more, while still having, like, the same more or less level of proportionality. There are also things called open lists. So, like, within a list system, you can still indicate a preference for somebody to go up to the top. So both PRSTV and a form of open list were recommended. Closed lists were explicitly not recommended because of this kind of design flaw, right? That other systems are better than them in. Even the old system had this link for the constituency MSs. And then all of a sudden it was just decided we're going to have this closed list system.
And why was that? Why was that system chosen?
Will probably knows better than me. I'm given to understand this was like a Labour UK kind of an ask, but I'm sure you'd have a better insight.
Yeah, as I understand it, it was a way of convincing more London-minded Welsh Labour MPs and figures to agree to the Senedd expansion.
Yes,
right.
And it's such an act of self-harm.
Yeah,
but for like the what's the word I'm looking for?
Dog shit, right? That's what we'll say.
Well, I mean, this is your constitution, to the extent that you have this kind of constitutional law. Like, it's not just for Christmas, right? It's forever, pretty much. Pretty hard to change an electoral system once it's in place, because the people who got voted in on the electoral system tend to like that system and minimize its flaws. And so I did feel like it was kind of a disgrace that it went through like this. And there was no reason for it. I mean, the problem in a way was the expert report was too good. So they had, like, here are the reasons why we've recommended these systems. Here is the reason why we haven't recommended a closed list system, because it cuts the link between the voter and the politician. None of that changed. These are just structural features of the system. I think it's just a matter of party control. Yeah. Right. So, like, and what's the one thing I'd say you don't need more of in Welsh politics is party control of the behaviour of the members.
Agree.
So it is nerdy. It's a bit Lord of the Rings. Like, if you think talking about Welsh politics alienates people, talking about electoral system design really does. But just to live here and to, like, my children are Welsh and I want Wales to succeed. And it's like, why would we do this to ourselves? And why is no one more annoyed about it, I guess, apart from the odd nerd who's going to moan on about it. But for me, yeah, like we're stuck with it now. The only thing I'd say is it works. It's a kind of functional system, right? So it does work. It does achieve reasonable proportionality. It just misses these features that connect the actual politicians to the electorate. And it means that it promotes kind of people who are loyal to the party. I mean, you want to get to the top of the list. It's the party selectorate who decides not just whether you're on the list, but the ordering. So the people you need to keep happy are not necessarily your constituents, right? And it's difficult to know what is a constituent in these big constituencies anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
But the people you need to keep happy are the people in the Senate, the people at the top of your party.
And it's such a ridiculous. One of the frustrating and best things about Welsh politics, it's there's so many consultations. There's so many. Everything takes so long to get anywhere because they need to hear from every single person. And this time they spent all that time listening to the experts and then went, actually, nah.
I mean, yeah, like they actually. I mean, I know personally some of the experts who contributed to this report. Like they're the top people. You know, they got the best people. It wasn't like they fudged the report. I mean, that would have been the way to do it, right?
Yeah.
Like get a hobbled expert. Get an actual expert, they'll give you their opinion, and then just decide not to do that. For anyone who cares to follow that along, that's just crazy. Yeah.
Is it changeable? Because the beauty of having such a young parliament is the fact that these things are constantly developing and changing. Is it changeable, or is it so difficult because, like you said, the people who benefit from it are not exactly going to push through a change?
Well, I guess the kind of advance. So here in the United Kingdom, like you don't have a single like codified written constitution, right? So in Ireland, if you want to change the constitution, you have to have a referendum, right? In America, if they want to change the constitution, they do a supermajority. Here, you can change the constitution legislatively. It's just the kind of, it's more like the political dynamics that would let that happen. Have to kind of bubble up. Now, the big push in this case was for more members of the Senate. That was the big kind of deal that this was attached to, which was kind of in everyone's interest who's in politics, right? So they went from 60 to 96. So you can kind of like pork barrel, we'd call it, just stick stuff with it. So unless they expand to like 150 members,
it's hard to imagine like in a 4-year parliament,
and they've cut the term. Yeah.
Someone saying, "Well, we've got limited legislative time. Let's spend it changing this system," which actually worked for us personally in that way. And but you notice quite a lot of people in Labour, like the Mark Drakeford's world, have said, "Well, I expect maybe it will be honed, it will be fine tuned." I'm like, I don't think it's going to.
Yeah, and I think what might run against that a little bit is I think the kind of constitutional status quo in the UK generally is pretty unstable at the moment, right? So obviously back in 2014 we had the Scottish independence referendum, we've had Brexit, and I think generally speaking the kind of arrangements between like Westminster, Whitehall and the Senate are like, what's the word I'm looking for? They're fragile. Like the system isn't working well.
It's haphazard.
It's haphazard. Like, I mean, it seems to be a lot about like if you can sort of shout Wales repeatedly in various meetings in London, stuff someone might pay attention or not. That's about as much of a system as they have.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously during COVID, you had Drakeford and Johnson who like couldn't find time to connect to one another on the phone. Like this is kind of a dysfunctional political system. I think also the way that the finances work is quite dysfunctional as well. So the Barnett formula generally is held to kind of disfavour Wales relative to Scotland in particular. And so why was the Barnett formula like enshrined so hard in 2014? Because it was kind of a sop to the Scots. Right? But this isn't a rational way to run a political system. And so this unwritten constitution that you have generally is held to run on like the good chaps theory. Is that something you guys have talked about before?
I don't think we have on the pod. No, go for it.
Good chaps theory is like, look, we haven't got a written constitution, but like our elite's not going to take the piss, right? Like we're not, like these are gentlemen basically, good chaps who run the country. So like I do think Boris Johnson really did overturn a lot of that, right? Kind of push things beyond where
the idea of norms, that idea
norms as a kind of a limiting feature of the system, right? So like the Sewell Convention in particular being like the norm that you don't legislate, in a devolved area without the consent at least of.
So the Sewell Convention essentially is the UK government won't legislate in an area which the Welsh government has responsibility for, and that's a convention, not
so it turned out, right? Yeah. So in the legislation that followed Brexit or was kind of implementing Brexit, like when the Senate withheld its consent, what happened? Oh, well, it's just a convention, wasn't it? So a convention isn't really worth the paper that it's written on, if it's even written on any paper at all. And so this way of running things by kind of norms and convention has kind of collapsed, or certainly has been sort of shown up as being subject to being broken at any time. And so as you're kind of looking at Scotland, like with the SNP kind of coming back again, look at Northern Ireland, what's happening over there. Like, it doesn't seem like the status quo is sustainable. And in that context, electoral systems might be part of the smorgasbord, to use a word of the week, of like options that are like looked at. But just purely organically in a 4-year term, as you said, probably with like, you know, a new party leading the government, it doesn't seem to me to be likely to be the number one. Like, you only have so much political capital.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Also, to have 2 elections with 2 new changed
One after the
systems, it would
other.
be like every year, every election there should be a new system. That's just change it.
Just to say, it can happen. So like in Italy, like there is a thing of once you start changing the system, you just keep changing it. It can kind of like, it does break a convention or a norm.
Yeah.
And so in Italy, that they regularly change, like a little bit like what you described.
Yeah.
And that can be manipulated, obviously, for party advantage
Sure.
quite easily. So it is a dangerous thing to play with
Yeah.
too much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, one of the warnings that experts gave to the Welsh government regarding the new system was that it really does favour a populist political party. It leaves an opportunity for a party which most people maybe wouldn't be in favour of to actually do very, very well. And reform, I mean, I've heard said that actually this is kind of ideal for reform. If you're going to have a proportional system, this is the thing they would want most. I've done quite a bit on reform in the last week or so.
They've done a few things on you as well, haven't they?
Yeah,
What was the word that was being banded around?
I think it was a see you next Tuesday.
God,
That's a good one, though.
Oh, do you know what?
You got to get that on a t-shirt, man. Yeah.
So if people have missed this, Nation Cymru did a story based on a leaked WhatsApp from an internal Reform WhatsApp where their head of communications for Reform UK referred to me as a...
word.
Yeah, that word.
How do you feel?
It's the best marketing I've ever had. I have never been more delighted to hear anything. It was so like...
Do you know anything in your life?
The first time you hear "I love you," none of it.
Matt, you spend months just trying to put out any journalism to drive newsletter subscribers, and one person calls you a see you next Tuesday, and everyone wants to subscribe.
I was like,
Interesting.
what if that see you next Tuesday has good material? And it turns out you do.
Yeah.
So it would seem. But it was
So funny. It was the director of communications as well. Then.
it was covered in
Just away with words.
Yeah.
in his defense. If I had been him and I had received the scrutiny that I have given him, I would think that I was that.
Sure.
One might argue just be better, but
Yeah.
They're quite sweary as a group of people, aren't they? Like the WhatsApp, like don't go on the WhatsApp with those lads if you don't want to.
No, if
Yeah.
you don't want that spicy language.
Yeah.
You call me a prude. I still think that is like I think that's a big word. I'm not dishing that out willy-nilly.
It's the biggest word, isn't it?
Yeah, I really reserve
Doesn't
that.
sound like Donald Trump then. The biggest
It's
word.
the biggest word. 4 letters, it's the biggest word.
is that the worst word? Do you think?
I'd say so. Yeah.
I'm struggling to think of a worse one.
Before you get into sort of like crimes, you know?
Yeah. Things that are illegal.
Yeah.
You want to speak like Italian, they have some tremendous curses, but
Really?
but
Really?
they tend to be about
Pope?
Well, your mothers tend to be involved sexual acts against.
You can get away with it with a bit.
with a bit of the
sort
old,
yeah.
the Italian hands.
For audio listeners.
This is why you should watch the pod.
So
So reform.
Does this new system favour them? And just give me your kind of, give us your general views on them as a party and their chances in the next Senate election.
Yeah, so it's mental what's happening with reform, right? I mean, I think that's the first thing. That's the first thing to say. So, like the Conservatives in Caerphilly got what, like 2%? Was it
2%, yeah.
I mean, they turned up, guys.
Mr.
They did
Potter.
turn up. Mr. Potter turned up. Fair play.
So they've eaten the Tories' lunch pretty much like entirely, right? Like that. So that's just happened. And I think like with Caerphilly or some of those other kind of local by-elections, like with polls, with a new party polling like that, you don't fully believe it's going to come true somehow, right? Until you actually start seeing it like crystallizing at the ballot box. So like we'd call this like partisan de-alignment in like the political science world, right? So people have kind of been de-aligned from their traditional party, the Conservative Party, and all of a sudden like they're realigning to Reform. And indeed, like I think as your newsletter showed, it's okay because a lot of the people who used to represent the Conservatives now represent Reform UK. I think here in Wales is interesting because while Reform are to the right of the Conservatives, I think there was a kind of an anti-Conservative bias built in, a kind of an emotional reaction that people had, which is like, even if I don't like Labour, I'm struggling to vote for the Conservatives, just like historically, culturally.
Yeah.
With Reform, they seem to have kind of avoided that feeling. And they've come from what were they 1%, 1.5% in the actual Senate election, all the way up to 35% in Caerphilly, and Caerphilly was like a bad day for them, right? So like, this is kind of this new force rising. What strikes me is like how, and this is more an opinion than an analysis, like how un-Welsh they are as a party. So how few Welsh specific kind of gripes or ideas they have, how much they're struggling to kind of field Welsh candidates or spokespeople. And so like it does feel like a bit of an astroturfed kind of a movement where you've got this British level, I suppose, impulse towards Reform. And you're like, shit, we need to actually put some like Welsh stuff like on this to make it Welsh enough to get over the
open the minds.
Yeah, and open the minds, restart the blast furnaces. You know, I think it's probably safe to say most Reform members and voters aren't big advocates for like the Welsh language, right? So probably the kind of people who get annoyed when they see the Welsh signs, and so that's a kind of a dynamic that I think is really interesting and one that might play out a little bit as we get into this kind of more intensive scrutiny we're going to see in the spring, summer. But to our earlier discussion, I think the electoral system is perfect for Reform where it's literally just a brand, right? So this Welsh layer, as it were, isn't really going to come up for the test. You're just going to vote, you're just going to tick the Reform box. You're not going to have to vote for a Reform person. And you probably get an easier ride just in terms of the volume of media inquiries, or maybe it's easier to bat away the kind of inquiries that you all are making in Wales than it might be in a UK level election. And so, the electoral system, to be clear, is fair, right? So it's not going to double votes on the right, but it is well suited for a party that has a kind of a UK level brand that wants to run in Wales, that doesn't really want you looking too closely at many of its Welsh candidates.
They are aware of that, though, aren't they? I got a leaflet from Reform through last week, and it's signed from Nigel Farage. Yeah. So I mean, they're aware of it. They must be sort of.
I think they're in the course of selecting a Welsh leader, right? That's what I understand.
They say it will be announced. I would be amazed if it was announced before April.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, I feel like where they're succeeding, where people have failed to do so in Wales, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, where people have no interest, is that we never have any rock stars in Welsh politics. And I think people misunderstand that Welsh people aren't that interested in it, because people were interested in Boris Johnson. Do you know what I mean? I remember it was before his landslide. I was at the winter version of the Royal Welsh. He turned up. It was like the Beatles had turned up. I was like trampled in the sheep shed because
Trampled in the sheep shed.
because all of these farmers.
It's like Panic at the Disco, isn't it?
It was just like rushing to see him. Like, the animals were just running wild because all the farmers were outside. And so people are interested in those personalities, and he wasn't somebody you'd expect your normal Welsh farmer to necessarily vote for either, So like, people are interested in those personalities. And I think it kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier. Welsh politics, a bit boring sometimes. Yeah,
often. How do you become one of those rock stars when I suppose the media that we consume in Wales tends to be a UK first?
Yeah. Well, it's like, when we had the show with Owen, and she was talking about how, it's a round chamber. So obviously it owes itself a lot more to listening and that kind of thing. At the end of the day, people shouting at each other from across the room is sexier. Do you know what I mean? to me.
Let's unpick this.
But that's more interesting. People shouting at each other, all of that. Like, I don't agree. And I find a lot of Westminster repulsive. But at the end of the day, it is interesting. And the way that Wales politics has been designed.
There's theatre.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the pomp and all of this. You don't have that in the Senedd. And, here, Reform, they've got a rock star.
Well, in some senses, they're just a vehicle for one person.
Yeah, of course,
right?
Yeah.
So, I used to write a little column for the South Wales Evening Post. And so, Nigel Farage, it was back then, I guess it was UKIP, was at the stadium in Swansea. And, I've never seen so many people at a political event, right? And, you'll never guess who was introducing him. Mr.
Nathan Gill?
Yeah. That's my first time meeting Nathan Gill.
Bad apple, I'm told.
Bad apple,
He's having his hour exercise at the moment.
But there was that sort of feeling, and he was a very dynamic public speaker. And if you just look at, I suppose, the other side of Welsh politics, I think Welsh Labour is really struggling for anyone like that. You know what I mean? So even say the extent to which Eleanor Morgan gets media oxygen is limited. What she does with it is even more limited. To be fair, she doesn't seem to have this kind of ability to be charismatic that you'd think most high level politicians would need to have. Farage has that, right? I mean, on Polanski on the Greens as well. Yeah. So we've seen these kind of figures energizing politics, and the main structural centre of Welsh politics, Labour, has no one really that you'd say, wow, that's somebody interesting to watch, even if they're just shouting.
Yeah, you don't have to agree with them, but I think if they're interesting, people know who they are, and that all over time builds up.
For sure, those two examples you gave, you can really feel that a hunger for it when people have, okay, I quite like this person. They seem to be able to sort of speak well.
Or I don't like this person.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll keep the TV on.
But they say something, don't they? They say something.
They seem to stand for something, don't they? They seem to back things up, and it might change a little bit. I wonder if, with more candidates and more people in the Senedd in 8 months' time, there is going to be a higher percentage of a rock star being amongst them. Having just more of a chance, or do you get sort of lost because
pretty much all the extra people are going to be Reform UK?
Can I tell you about one of them? Can I tell you about a guy? I did a piece over the weekend on Reform.
Go on.
Reform's Wales director is a man named David Thomas.
Okay.
We did, me and Ryan, the guy I work with, did a kind of this profile on Reform in Wales. And because they don't have a leader, the only person who you could really put forward as the main person in Wales is this David Thomas guy. He's got several names. He also DJs under DJ Dowster.
DJ Dowster.
DJ Dowster.
What's a lad?
So DJ Dowster, let me just give you a little bit of background on DJ Dowster.
As in, I could book DJ Dowster for a wedding?
You could. Someone's clearly got a party. And he's like, this is excellent timing.
The school fair is coming up.
Doesn't he do a window cleaning business as well? So he can clean your windows, DJ your wedding.
Oh
wow.
So DJ Dowster was credited as a composer on a track which included lyrics like stanking ass bitches that need to wash up and the word, a derogatory word for a person with cerebral palsy, which I'm not going to say.
Wonderful.
Reform,
the school fair is going to be a washout.
Reform said that the lyrics and the music had been sampled from other tracks and it didn't originate from DJ Dowster. He also does run a cleaning business, correct, called Dr. Squeegees.
Dr. Squeegees.
He's a doctor as well.
Yeah.
Do you want to know what's even better? We
Dr. Squeegees.
Dr. Squeegee.
Let's not move past that. That's fucking mad.
We're going to do it. So in 2022, so he's a counsellor in Torvine. In 2022, a different cleaning company in Newport discovered that their promotional signs were going missing that they were putting up. So frustrated that they kept going missing, they got an Apple AirTag and they put it in the sign.
That's so clever.
And they did a social media post where they said, huge thanks to Reese and Nathan in Newport for giving us the fantastic idea to put an AirTag. We've today, it's helped us locate our missing banners. They were in the back of Dr. Squeegee's van.
No!
So, to be clear...
Dr. Squeegee is
to be clear...
Pink gloves on.
We approached Dr. Squeegee for comment.
Oh, okay.
And he said the sign had been collected during a litter pick as it had been fly tipped and that the sign shouldn't have been up in the first place. And then he said the story has been twisted many times by different media outlets for their own narrative. And then he said that it was a shame that we as journalists hadn't covered the vital role he does as a counsellor, including a food bank, which he said serves the people and is donated by the people. So we've got DJ Dowster,
Okay.
Dr. Squeegee,
Yeah.
David Thomas.
Great.
That's not enough nicknames for him.
Oh,
He has another, which he's pushed really hard online, where he describes himself as the bald Clark Kent. One of his tweets had a picture of him on what seems to be a keyboard and some screens saying, the bald Clark Kent, trying to get a little bit of studio work done. The next one was responding to someone where he said, don't forget that when you're in the Senedd, mate, with the new specs, nobody will get away with the bullshit that goes with that place. I'm the bald Clark Kent.
what's going on?
Is he trying to suggest that when he wears glasses, people don't recognise him?
I'm gonna show you
the glasses.
I think.
So it's like,
Yeah,
who is
okay,
it?
that kinda
Squeegee?
makes sense.
Here's some pictures of the bald Clark Kent.
And the glasses are strong.
They're strong glasses.
I
also.
wouldn't see that man and thought that's Dr. Squeegee.
No.
So he has baffled me. He's
Yeah, yeah.
contented me.
You've said before that actually vagueness is reform's friend going into the election, but you've also said the same for Plaid Cymru as well. Can you explain that?
Yeah, and I think to be fair, like this is the advice for any party or politician who's doing well in the polls, right? So like we would have said when we were covering like Joe Biden in 2020, like don't talk too much about your policies, right? You're ahead. Just talk about not being Trump. Similarly with Plaid, like especially with the nature of their coalition, they're going to struggle, right, to have policies that make everybody happy. So on, say, something like housing, like they have a lot of their new voters want a lot of houses built. A lot of their kind of core electorate don't want a lot of houses built. What's the answer? Just say housing is important, right? Housing is important to us. And so vagueness when you're doing well is generally a good political strategy. And especially, I suppose, where you're not just getting hammered like day after day after day, like where the media load, I suppose, is kind of light that you're going to have to face. Like, why would you give out a policy? So like the Brexit party back in one of the European elections didn't have a manifesto at all, for example, right? They're just like, well, why bother? People know it's the name of the party describes what we do.
Yeah.
And to the extent that like the kind of downside of it is, I suppose, when it comes to governing, like you haven't actually written down what you're going to do, and everyone has a different idea.
Does it make it harder? Because like obviously Labour kind of did a bit of a massive fence sit running up to the next the previous election, and then when you get into power, it's then hard to do stuff because you haven't almost got the endorsement of certain policies.
Yeah, well, that's kind of my analysis of UK Labour at the moment, right? Like they haven't sort of said what they stand for. And they seem to stand for just replacing the Tories with Labour people, and things are just going to get better. And then when they have to make choices, everyone's like, well, we haven't actually signed up for this, right? Like, because what did we sign up for was like just a very vague, and to the extent they have made promises, they're the promises they have to break to run things, right? So like there is a kind of medium-term governing advantage. And I think in terms of political leadership, that's what you're looking for, right? Like somebody who's going to like set things out in a reasonably detailed way and do it. But like in the kind of cut and thrust of the campaign, like each one of those policy points is like an unexploded bomb.
Yeah.
So like think about Theresa May with the, what was it called? The dementia tax. Yeah. Right?
Oh, yeah.
So that was like, I guess from an academic point of view, it's like, yeah, like you have this massive fucking problem in the UK, right? Like it's just building up and building up and building up that like care for people is going to cost a lot of money because the population's aging and we can't really cover it. It's crippling our councils. But then if you say, well, I'm going to do something about it by taxing people for it, I mean, it's a huge problem. It's a huge own goal. And so like kicking the can down the road is the way that a lot of British politics is working. But we're getting to the point where it's like, yeah, you can't actually make any decision because you haven't built a coalition around a kind of way of doing politics.
And it's part of the challenge with that because it's first past the post, it's very hard to have different views that they can then come together because essentially you have to have one offering that appeals to one specific group of the electorate. So how do you see a way of kind of fixing this?
Yeah, well, the difficulty, I always think with political systems, there's kind of like two ways of doing it. Like generally speaking, there isn't a majority for anything in any population, right? So that's That's a problem.
Very
Like
helpful.
if you ask the four of us, maybe there's a plurality for Guinness here. I know you introduce cider, I might go for a cider.
Yeah.
Right. So like the first past the post system kind of artificially generates a majority. Like it's designed to build a majority for like a winning party. The kind of proportional system just pushes that back to negotiations after the election. Right, so I don't know. The Netherlands just had an election where D66 did really well. They got like 16% of the seats, right? So like you're going to have 3 or 4 months then when they all negotiate amongst themselves like a coalition government. So that like manufacturing of majority is difficult in any event. But I do think the kind of somewhat opportunistic politics that we've seen at the UK level, where it's just about not being the other guys, like it's catching up on us now. Like these kind of existential crises that Britain is facing, it can't just be like, just get to the end of the week.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Which is exactly what it feels like at the moment.
On that basis, do you think that Plaid Star would be rising like it is if it weren't for reform? Because, I suppose the whole kind of we're just not Labour and people are fed up at Labour, would that have got them as far if like now there's a very real threat of a shake-up that some people don't want?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, I think in Caerphilly, definitely. I think in Caerphilly, in that kind of like, it's in Welsh politics, that's the last kind of election like that we're going to have, where it's winner take all, one seat.
Sure.
They definitely benefited, probably to tune of like 15-20%, right, of people are just like, let's block reform. They're definitely going to run on an anti-reform messaging, and that's like their kind of happy place. Yeah. And reform is a kind of, we'd call it like a polarizing agent, right? So it's Marmite type politics. It probably does suit Plaid. Yeah, it probably does suit them. The Welsh Conservatives are, kind of too sad to really have a go off. Do you know what I mean? They're not like a credible threat in the way that reform are. What is difficult to say, and I think there's going to be a lot of campaigning around, like, well, you just need 13% more or less to get a seat. So that kind of coming together to block reform argument doesn't kind of play the same, or at least it doesn't logically play the same. Will people try and use it? I guess they probably will. Yeah, but it is good for Plaid. Yeah, to the extent that Plaid is kind of further left than Labour, as this kind of stretching out of the system does suit them. But then obviously that keeps going. So you've got the Greens coming up now, more of a threat to Plaid. And I think a lot of the Green surge, I mean, a lot of what Polanski is doing is just having a go at reform.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's really something to be said for what you're saying, that an extreme on one side kind of enables the extreme on the other side.
Polanski seems to be coming out with sort of policy, as you were saying about being vague and things, and then the media being able to kind of speak to people about those policies. He seems to be somebody who is kind of being quite open about.
Is that because he's not ahead yet? So you can say more when you're trying to get ahead?
I think it, in the first place, he's not participating for like a plurality. He's speaking to people on the left, right? So somebody advocating those kind of leftist stances makes sense when, like, what's their ceiling? Like 20% maybe? But they can kind of outflank like Labour and even Plaid. I think that if they were in with a serious chance of actually like winning an election, it might, those kind of quotes about taxing people and stuff like that might come back to haunt you, right? Because people don't like to think about being taxed. He's pretty good at framing these arguments, though, and it has, I think in a way, having Reform and the Greens in like BBC studios does at least mean we're debating like different ways of doing things, and not just like trying to blame one another or take credit, which is so much of the dynamic of UK politics.
Not that it's a means to an end, but there's something about Reform bringing attention to Wales and Welsh politics on a UK-wide level that we haven't seen really before. And, the fact that national news was covering Caerphilly by-election is crazy,
it was,
and like, hate to give them their flowers, that wouldn't have happened without Reform.
Yeah, I wonder whether there'll be more of a Westminster lens and it will seem clearer for the average voter. Clearer in the sense that Dr. Squeegee sort of levels of clearness. And
loved that. How long were you thinking?
I've not listened to the last 10 minutes of what you guys have been saying, to be completely honest.
This has been so much fun. I've really enjoyed it. And it's not because I think this might actually be alcoholic Guinness. I'm going to ask you, before we finish, predictions. It's a really hard thing to predict different constituencies, a different system, parties which have never polling well. If you were a betting man, how do you think this? How do you think it's going to go in May?
Right. Okay. So I should say we're setting up an online prediction platform as part of the electoral study. So it'll be called Horse Race Politics. And
politics.
That's the whole idea, right? Is that you can predict these different outcomes. And because your question is an interesting one, it's like, well, what are we predicting in the first place, right? Because it's very unlikely one party is going to have a majority. So we're probably talking about which party is going to be largest. Is that what you'd say is kind of at stake here? Yeah. So it does seem to me quite like, so if you look at the bookies odds, which is something I'd always look at, like it would have Reform UK ahead. But I did make a prediction based on the bookies odds for Caerphilly, which screwed me over, right? So like Plaid Cymru came through. And it does seem to be pretty much a neck and neck call between those two. I just see Reform UK as fundamentally more like volatile political entity, mostly because of the kind of relative novelty of this party. And so we've seen, say, in Kent, like the difficulties they're having when they're getting into power. So there's a lot of like unexploded bombs there. Because of Nigel Farage's history of just like smashing these parties apart when they no longer suit his purposes, it does seem to me Plaid's like a safer bet, basically, to kind of just have a larger number of seats. And it does seem to me likely that we're going to have a kind of a progressive consensus coalition government of some sort, that's the ultimate outcome of the election. But keep an eye out for it in the new year, Horse Race Politics. I'll be promoting it. That's where people can kind of play a little tournament where they predict various aspects of the election.
Well, we're going to do that, aren't we?
We're going to love that.
Yeah.
That's made for us. That's amazing.
Look, this has been really, really fun.
This has been a really fun one.
Yeah.
If people want to find you on social media, where can they do it?
So they can find me on LinkedIn is probably the best place. I still maintain like an X profile, but mainly as a sort of just like a window into hell. So
well, your day's going a little bit too well. Let me just have a little
so LinkedIn, but do keep an eye out for Horse Race Politics at .co.uk, which is like we're kind of, it's a bit, if you build it they will come at the moment, but that's where we're going to be centering a lot of the coverage of the Welsh politics in the new year.
Nice.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thanks very much for having me.
Very welcome. Anything to shout, Rob?
Nothing at all. I'm on tour. It starts soon. Tickets are available.
No, I've absolutely loved having you on the podcast. I think you've been the most fun guest.
Jock and Power.
Oh, he knows what to win me over.
The Renicon's stomping his feet, nodding his head.
More fun than Slaughter was good.
Slaughter's
boy,
awesome.
like I thought.
Yeah.
If you want to find out more about my work covering Dr. Squeegee /DJ Dowster / the Bald Clark Kent / David Thomas, the councillor for Torvine, you can go to my newsletter, which is called the Will Hayward Newsletter.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Cheers.
Diolch yn fawr. I've been Mel Owen.
I've been Robin Morgan.
Will Hayward.
And I think I'm still Matt Wall. Thanks very much.
Bye.
It's all right.